It's Dave Nemo Weekends. Today's program features Jimmy Mack
and Claire Marie.
She came from Planet Claire. And she came from there. She drove a Plymouth Satellite, faster than the speed of light.
Mike Slater joins us this morning. He is here with his partner, Tom Roach. Let me tell you a little bit about both of them before I kind of turn it over to them. Along with being the author of, and forgive me if I get this wrong, Necronom Nom 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 Nom. He is the purveyor of infernally bad puns, and boy, this book is full of them. He's a designer and mastermind behind games of all sorts, a lifelong fan of things not of this earth, and is at this point ready to loose some of his ideas upon your game space. He has a shared vision of lightweight design powerhouse producing tight, fun, high-quality games and products for all audiences. He is joined by Tom, who is a professional, Tom Roach, a professional civil engineer in the field of land development. In other words, as he writes here, these are his jokes, not mine. He plays with dirt. He coaches gymnastics and tumbling. And on top of all of that, he has launched a game company, Red Duke Games, LLC. He's been creating games and coming up with ideas for games since August of 2011. I could go on for a while. Why don't I just say good morning, Mike, and good morning, Tom. Welcome to Dave Nemo Weekends.
Good morning, Jimmy. Thank you for having us.
So let me start with Mike, because I got to tell you, as I told you in the hard break, I couldn't stop laughing. You could just simply read the titles of the chapters in Necronom Nom Nom, and you would not stop laughing. Can you tell me? I want an origin story, a backstory for what, in the name of sweet mother of pearl, inspired you to put together a book of Lovecraft recipes for a good time, and then we'll talk to Tom for a second as well.
Absolutely. So back in the early 2000s, when the Nom Nom meme came out, my brain immediately said, well, there should be a Necronom Nom Nom, obviously. And the idea would not leave me alone. I was literally writing down what kind of recipes would go in such an eldritch tome of culinary horrors. And after a while, I had like 37 of them, which was about the time that Tom and I had met at a game day, and being sort of the only couple of people that showed up on time and waited for everybody else, we would inflict our games on each other. And finally, Tom turns around to me at one point and says,
"Hey, Mike, want to start a game company?"
I said, yeah, that would be awesome. You know what our first product should be?
What's that, Mike?
A cookbook. And Tom said,
"Wait, what? Yeah, so
actually, first he said, yeah, and then he said, what?
Yeah, wait, what?
He was swept away by your enthusiasm, Mike. It's the old thing when it's like, and then we should get on motorcycles and ride off a cliff. Absolutely. Wait, what? I understand.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you did it, though. I mean, here's the thing. And despite the fact that, while Tom was playing with dirt, he looked up and said, what? But then you guys actually created – it's a beautiful book, by the way. It's not only really fun and enjoyable and has a lot of great recipes in it and a lot of good fun things to kind of do, but it really does, Mike, it really does kind of fit into the overall project, though, which is just giving people a chance to have a really well-planned, themed good time where the work that goes in beforehand is as much fun as the thing itself. Is that fair, Mike?
It is, but it's only fair to credit Tom with that, because while I had the idea and knew how I wanted it to look and what I wanted it to be, I couldn't cook anything, which is why at the time the first thing that we did in the Kickstarter was a roast beef sandwich, because that was my level of skill. Tom can actually cook, and even my wife looked at me like, "You're going to do a what book?" Because my lack of skill in the kitchen was legendary at the time. I actually learned to cook through the project, and it was Tom that made sure that the recipes actually functioned and that this is a real cookbook in addition to being agony-inducing screams from puns.
I got to tell you, I swear I told Julian Simpson a gin and Miskatonic, and we almost didn't get back on the air with a straight face. It goes on the Fountains of Madness. I couldn't get over it, and the Amigo to Go. And they are funny if you don't know the stories. They are absolutely riotous if you do, and it's also you hit the sweet spot too, pun intended, that you were actually able to kind of make the things actually work for the subject matters they were touching on. Because I got to tell you, I can imagine the corridors of Miskatonic University with lots of people drinking gin, given what they're reading over there. Wouldn't you say that's fair, Tom?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And we wanted to make sure that, above all, the recipes were cool to read. I mean, there's actually stories there too. And, above all, the recipes had to work. I mean, we have recipes from my family, Mike's family. We had a few chefs involved with the project. I mean, we wanted to make sure that this was a real cookbook.
It is. And by the way, I'm a Louisiana boy, and my wife wants nothing to do with cooking, so I actually know a little bit about cooking. Your gumbo recipe isn't bad, by the way. I wasn't throwing the book out the window at that point. So well done on that as well. Just want to kind of point this out. There's some really stuff. It's a good cookbook. It really is. And that's really kind of the foundational thing here, too, because watch this little segue. The whole thing about cooking is you have to some degree follow the rules, and since you guys are also game creators, the idea of making sure you had the basic engine for how to make this work had to be in place before all the bells, whistles, and icing on the cake. Is that fair, Tom?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we couldn't do it without, Mike has the ideas. He's the driving force behind making sure that, we had not just a recipe, but it fit with, everything that we wanted to do with the cookbook. And building, one without the other just wouldn't have worked.
Let me ask you this, Mike, and we'll get to the game stuff now for a second here. Can you talk about your own interest in games? I mean, because you talk about the idea of what a great origin story that you and your partner actually met because you're the only ones who are on time, which, of course, is a remarkable thing when it comes to gamers. But can you talk a little bit about your love of games, where it comes from, and then once you finish up with that, I'd love Tom to talk about that as well, because it's a really kind of cool connective tissue here.
Sure, absolutely. So, I was that typically somewhat quiet kid, in school. I liked to read. I didn't hate school itself until later. And, my parents taught me to read with comic books. So I kind of started with fantasy worlds, as ways to, access places and people and things and times that, I couldn't just walk out into the world or turn on the TV and see. And so it sort of naturally segued from there to things like Piers Anthony's Xanth series, which is a, fantasy series. And then, I was tooling around the B. Dalton bookstore, which we used to have those across the country, of course, and saw these incredible looking covers by Michael Whalen for H.P. Lovecraft's work. Now, I had heard of H.P. Lovecraft because I was already, playing games by probably junior high school, and Call of Cthulhu was, second only to Dungeons and Dragons. It was darker. It was set back in the 30s and had all these literally insane, monsters and creations. So that was kind of my entry point, was, those novels and that game. And, at some point you say to yourself, I don't know, maybe not everybody does. I did. I could write these. You're already writing stuff for an adventure. You're halfway there. And now it's just a matter of, learning the mechanics and how to write good ones. And I think that was where Tom, and I, when we started to design games together, really meshed up. I might have an idea or a setting or something, but he'd look at what I was doing in the mechanics part and go, no, that's not going to work. Let's cross that out, put this in here, let's try that. And it just, just worked. We just worked together beautifully and produced neat things.
Tom, I was going to tell you really quickly, and I want to tell this to Mike too. Actually, I have the first edition of Call of Cthulhu because the moment it came out, I made my father drive me across the river in New Orleans to go pick it up at the one game store that had it. And I remember that box and taking out that rule book and knowing D&D and being swept away into that particular. And I wouldn't have known about Lovecraft's work if it hadn't been for the D&D Monster Manual, which is what tipped me off to it in the first place. And then some crazy librarian said, if you like Poe, check out this story called Rats in the Walls, and I kind of got hooked in. Can you kind of give us the same little backstory as regards to you, in regards to gaming and your love of literature and all things wonderful and weird on this Halloween?
Well, my path was a little different than Mike's. I came to gaming a little later, basically in college. That's where I started role-playing, playing Palladium books, work, and Riffs, and a few other odds and ends type of role-playing games, but, computer games, and my experience came from sci-fi TV shows, whatever I can get a hold of. But, my gaming really started with Warhammer Fantasy, and, that was my intro, and that was the game group that Mike and I were both in, and I just kind of took off from there. But as far as literature goes, I read a lot of fantasy, David Eddings, and Robert Jordan's probably one of my favorite authors, and I'm really looking forward to the new show coming out. But yeah, it's my path kind of varied from Mike's, but we had kind of met in the middle. And when we started Red Duke Games, it was we figured out that we worked really well together. If I had a something that I couldn't figure out, Mike always had something that he could, and back and forth, we worked really well together. And it was surprising, and we've kind of kept going with it, and it's really worked out so far.
Really quickly, guys, if you're just joining us, we're pleased to welcome Tom Roach and Mike Slater. Necronom Nom Nom is the book we're talking about, but on a broader scale, we're talking about RedDukeGames.com. So can you tell us a little bit, Mike, and once again, we can turn it over to Tom as well, too, what kind of games you guys have to offer? And what it is you guys you're trying to create both with the book and with these games. Give us a preview of what people can expect when they enter into your gaming world.
Sure. So the idea for the cookbook, and the reason that I pitched the cookbook first, was that we would be able, if we could, kind of get a hit, and it really looked like we could because the internet reacted very well on Kickstarter. We would have an engine with which to fund the creation of actual games. So that the cookbook was actually a means to create the games. And here we are, almost, 3 years in, where we've had a couple of games available, card games, because they're much easier to produce in the United States. Board games are almost all produced overseas. We just didn't have the money. We're going to have 4 games out by the end of the year. Knock on wood, there's, little transportation and printing crisis going on, materials crisis. But
by the way, our listeners on this station, they know a whole bunch about supply chain issues.
Yeah, you think? I thought that might possibly, resonate somewhere. So, we'll actually have 4 games out by the end of the year, but all things aligning, the stars aligning properly. But to answer your question, our games run the gamut from little kids games, right? We have a game called Which One? It's a reading primer. It's a logic primer. It helps kids figure out how to, resolve conflicts peacefully because, it's actually part of the game. And, it's very popular with the 5 to 9 year old set, and college kids, but they play it with different accessories. And all the way up to, actually writing a 5e book that we hope will hit Kickstarter very early next year. That is a very, very dark world that it's completely serious fantasy in a very dark setting, and everything in between. And I have to admit that most of our products at some point somewhere inject a bit of that sort of dark humor that is evident in the Necronomnom and its sequel, which actually just came out, Lovecraft Cocktails. So the Necronomnom gets a boozy companion now. And with that, Tom may have some input.
And by the way, anybody who actually, the one thing I've always found weird about Lovecraft, Tom, is the fact that for all of the books we've read by him, why nobody in those books is an alcoholic always escapes me, because after some of the things those people see, maybe if they'd have had the book on the cocktails, they might be able to deal with the eldritch horrors a bit more. Is that fair?
A little bit more tolerance, you mean? Yeah,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And to follow up with what Mike was saying in our games, as with, a lot of game designers out there, you have one or two projects that you're working on, but you always have, 5 or 6 ideas that's running around in your head. And we have roughly, I want to say, Mike, about 20 different projects that we have, at least on paper, in different forms. That, it runs the gambit from a small card game to all the way up to a board game. And then, now we have the project with the 5e setting. And so, it's just a matter of which project we're pushing forward first. We have, several different card games set in different settings. There's too many out there to really pin down that we want to work on next.
Mike, I was going to tell you, and I'm so deeply sympathetic to both of you on this, is that writers and creators have two very distinct and yet similar problems: writer's block or writer's glut. And the glut is sometimes worse because you have like 40 or 50 amazing ideas. And I mean ideas where it's not just, one idea wrapped up in 40 different manifestations, but you actually have 40 or, 20 to 30, 40 ideas. And you almost become paralyzed as what do we start with first? But it seems, because you got the 4 card games and because you got 2 books, Necronomnom and Lovecraft Cocktails, which, by the way, you can find out a lot about this at RedDukeGames.com, guys, if you're listening right now. It seems that you guys have figured out a way to kind of move forward, to get through these projects in sort of some kind of sequence. How do you guys manage to pick what's next and follow it through to the end without letting the other projects distract you?
So my answer to writer's block and writer's glut is actually the same. If you ever got a look at my computer, you would see that there are about 67 tabs open all the time, and they are almost all of them are new or individual. They're one of 3 things. They are stories, they are games, or songs. Now, I don't compose music, but I can do corrupted lyrics, like anybody's business. And we're working on Unspeakable Carols, a book of corrupted holiday poems that eventually will find an outlet. So my answer is the same. I open another tab and I keep going. So if I get stuck, I just flip back to something else and I make a little progress on that. When one of them gets to a point where I think, hey, we can put this in the pipeline because this is just, now we're porting it into cards and putting it into, the format that a printer wants, and off it goes. Then I show it to Tom, and Tom says, all right, that can be 4th in the pipeline, and it'll bump this down a little bit because it's further ahead. Like Tom said earlier, and yes, and play tested, Tom. Yes, just like the recipes have to be tested. The games are tested as well, and so it's taken us a long time to get our first board game out because we want to do everything domestically if we can, and it's very hard to find domestic production for board games. Anybody listening that has a connection, please contact RedDukeGames.com. we do have our first one coming out in small batch production, working with a local company here in Pennsylvania, and we're very excited about that.
By the way, just to let you know, if you think for 1 minute that I'm not going to have a Christmas party with Nog Sothoth, you've got another thing coming. Just want to kind of point this out to everybody listening. The other thing is, by the way, I love that. I call that what you just kind of described. I call that project hijack, where at some point, if you keep working on enough little things, bit by bit, piece by piece, something eventually goes. I see my moment. I'm going to seize your imagination and kind of take you to the finish line. For me, something demands to get finished is always what happens. I find, Mike.
Yep.
Something always kind of says, no, choose me, and they end up, basically, cursing everybody else with an elder sign and then taking over the story, right?
That's pretty much exactly what the Necronomicon did. That's an excellent description of what happened.
Yeah, and it's just, and by the way, I wanted to ask this, Tom, since we're actually heading into, the joke I always make is people say I gained 15 pounds over Christmas, and I'm like, you're a liar. You started eating on Halloween and didn't stop until New Year's Day. How long did it take you to test to basically cook all of this stuff? And did you have people around? Did you throw little parties to kind of sample it? Did you have to suffer on your own like some sort of Miskatonic professor, or was there something in between?
Well, for start to finish on the project, I think it roughly took about a year. And that was a matter of collecting recipes and testing out ideas. But for the cooking, you're correct. I am not pleased with how much weight I've gained over the last couple of years because of projects like this, and I'm not looking forward to our next project, which potentially can, just not be good for my waistline. The next book and such. But for the recipes themselves, yeah, I was testing and trying things and figuring out what would work, what wouldn't work, what would taste good. And, it was real easy with some of my family recipes and Mike's family recipes because we didn't have to tweak or test or, the meals were already tested, already, really good. So moving forward, it's a matter of, there's going to be a lot of testing, and I'm going to have to figure out a way to exercise more.
By the way, it's all despair and hopelessness. That's the whole point, isn't it? I mean, the idea is, that's what we're talking about Lovecraft here. So I do want to give you, I have a question, a very specific one before we run out of time here. You actually, I can't get over Nog Sothoth. So I want to ask you, it's a pretty standard, straightforward eggnog routine until we get to, well, by the way, points for making people actually use the Kraken black spice rum. But you actually add tapioca pearls. And is that an attempt to kind of give it kind of a weirdness, the idea that you have deep ones lurking inside of the nog? Is that the idea? You try to figure out a little wrinkle in there? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, so the
wrinkles matter.
Yes, they do. The black spheres, floating around, and they're heavy, so they kind of gravitate toward the bottom. They make the look of the thing, right? So Yog-Sothoth in the stories is described as a congery of spheres, right? So it's this God-dimensional thing that is just made out of these spheres that somehow interconnect. And I thought, well, I've got the obligatory pun for the name. Now, how do I actually make it fit the creature? Because the way I kept myself from going completely insane in this project, and I hope kept it interesting, was I approached each recipe from the perspective of the story, character, or creature that it was based on.
Tom, so Mike, I'm going to ask a boom. We have a break here we have to take. Can you hang out for a few more minutes after that? Can you give us some more time?
Sure can. Yeah, absolutely.
Of course.
Yep.
All right, guys, hold on tight. I'll be right back after these messages. Happy Halloween from Dave Nemo Wickens. Halloween. It's the gift that keeps on giving. Let me tell you guys something. We care deeply about you over here at Radio Nemo of North America, and Dave Nemo Weekends loves you. Our new friends, Mike Slater and Tom Roach, and I have been scheming up a way to get you something very, very special. We're going to figure out a way to get this to them. Mike, I wanted you to tell our listeners what, in fact, like one of those unspoken tomes, like Robert E. Howard's Black Book or the Necronomicon, as opposed to Necronom, nom, 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 we actually have a secret thing that exists that people should know about. Tell them what actually there is for Necronom, nom, 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 nom.
Okay, so somewhere in the deep, dark recesses of my hard drive, there is an audio file that we recorded of the Necronom, nom, nom, recipe by recipe. It's done by the extremely talented Ray Greenlee, who does audible books, which your listeners may be familiar with. He did a fantastic job of going progressively more insane with each recipe. I mean, he sounds like he's just going more and more nuts as he reads the book, which of course is the idea. This is not a commercial project. It's not something that we can sell, and I will probably have to go talk to our publisher to clear everything for sure. But I think that we can get it to your listeners one way or another, and we will definitely work on that, because we thought this was fun for the Kickstarter, and people were like, oh, ha, great, wow, that was actually fun to listen to. Oh my God, truckers! At first I thought, cookbook. How much? I mean, you can't cook while you're going down the road, but you sure could listen to it and have a few laughs.
Let me tell you something, guys. The idea of the reader being in a complete state of madness by the time, and this is really funny because the last two things in the book in the Necronom Nom Nom are the cake in yellow, which, by the way, that's genius. A little bit of I mean, you managed to mix in True Detective and pre-Lovecraft, which is kind of spectacular. And then finally, the ring that should not be. I can see somebody, after having created the custard out of space, might go a little bit crazy, might go a little bit mad. I do want to let people know one more time where they can go to find out more about you guys before I forget to do this again. Where can we check you out?
So the easiest place is www.reddukegames.com. Spelled just like it sounds, REDDUKEGAMES.com. That's where you can see what we've got out, what's coming out. There's links to the books. Now, you can buy the Necronom Nom Nom or Lovecraft Cocktails anywhere books have souls. Anywhere books are sold. And or
waiting all morning. You've been waiting all morning to do that, man. All morning long.
Welcome to my world.
We go to shows, and it's like we have a stand-up retail routine. Tom and I. It's like a two-man comedy routine. But you can find the book from your favorite bookseller. The mom and pop shops to the service that shall not be named. They all sell the book, and we benefit from all of those. If you can help your local small business, we think that's great. And if you can't, we don't want you not to have things. So please get them where you're comfortable and where you like. But
by the way,
that's where you can find most of our stuff. Yep.
By the way, just letting everybody know, if you have somebody who really loves cookbooks and really loves cocktail books, these things are straight up the legit deal too. It's not just a gag. It's not just a pun-driven kind of exercise. They're great recipes. They're great cocktails. If you have anybody in your life that's spooky or just wants to cook something really good, they really are fantastic. And equally as important, they are absolutely wonderful coffee table books. I just want to point this out as well, along with having some customization options that are available on the website as well. The illustrations, in regards to anybody who is both a cooking fan and a Lovecraft fan, it is an absolute joy. Sydney, if you get a chance, you take a look at it, by the way, you as well, at reddukegames.com. There is some... how much control did you guys have in regards to the illustrations, in regards to the layout, not just the content of the book, but the curation of the layout? Either one of you is welcome to answer that question. What do you say we start with Tom and then go to Mike?
Sure. Well, I have to give all praise and all recognition to Kurt Komoda, our artist for the book. for both books. He really, really nailed it.
Gorgeous.
Knocked it out of the park. And Mike can give you a little bit more of the backstory on Kurt.
Sure.
Go ahead, Mike.
So Kurt Komoda is a sorcerer who lives in North Jersey.
Where most sorcerers come from. Don't know if you know that,
Well,
but
yeah.
North Jersey is the site of most sorcerers. Go on, please.
Yes. So he's well known. He was well known before the project for his Lovecraftian monsters that he just loves to draw, and has a background in anatomy, and really pays attention to how a thing looks, and you should be able to look at it and see, yeah, that could be a real creature. Those limbs could work. He is phenomenal with details like that. Now, the art direction usually took the form of one of two things: a paragraph with some ideas, or a horrible napkin sketch in my hand of roughly what I wanted it to look like. And then Kurt could pull everything he needed out of my brain across the miles between central Pennsylvania and North Jersey and put what I was thinking on the paper. And that really was our process. So we were blessed or cursed, or however you want to look at it, in terms of that process. But he would take a short description and draw exactly what you wanted, even if you didn't necessarily know what that was. He just is unbelievable to work with. So it went from ideation to, oh, here it is. Yes, that's exactly what I wanted. Kurt, how did you do that? I'll stop asking.
It's like a great director of photography when you say, that's exactly what I wanted. Thank God somebody finally understands me. I want to ask you one more question before we have to finally say goodbye to you guys, but thank you so much for spending your Halloween with us. Tom, of all the recipes in Necronom Nom Nom, what is your absolute favorite? Which one do you really just love, and then what is your favorite pun in this ridiculous collection?
Well, as far as my favorite recipe, of course I have a sweet tooth, and I would have to say the Joe Slater's inbred pudding.
No relation.
No relation. It's basically family recipe, Southern-style bread pudding with a whiskey sauce and a buttercream icing. And it just makes my molars hurt talking about it, and I can't tell you how many times I've made it for friends, family, and we'll go to a party or something. I'll just bring a big pan of it, and it's gone by the end of the night. But yeah, there's too many puns, I can't pick a favorite. It's like your favorite child kind of thing. You can't go that way.
Oh, no. You can't pull that on me, pal. I've had plenty of relatives in my life who pick their favorite child and let everybody else know everybody else sucks. No, okay, I'm kidding. Mike, I ask you the same question in all fairness. By the way, gin and Miskatonic is so obvious and basic. How I missed it, I'm ashamed of myself. Very pleased with that. What is your favorite recipe? What in particular does it for you? And what pun would you kind of pat yourself on the back for being like, I'm a genius?
Oh, geez, no. I can't do that because the puns, I can't stop now. I mean, bad things will happen if I break that pact. The puns just have to keep coming. Right. Joe Slater's inbred pudding, is awesome. It is the first test dish. We brought that to a convention that saw about 40,000 people a day through the doors. We made, I don't know how many pans, and put it in like little 1-inch square cups, and it just disappeared. We handed them out with the card announcing the Kickstarter.
I love the idea that it disappeared. It's kind of like, the case of, the statement of Randolph Carter, Harley has disappeared. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Right. I'm sorry.
No. So Joe Slater, of course, is a character in one of Lovecraft's stories. He's a hillbilly who gets taken over by something and goes on a mad killing spree and dies in an asylum. So we made dessert out of it.
Of course.
That's yes. My favorite recipe in the book is the formless spaghetti, which was actually one of our submissions by a woman named Deanna Vassal, and I hope I'm saying her name right. It's basically shrimp scampi in a pastry pocket. They're delicious. That's my personal favorite. As far as puns go, oh my God, probably my most terrible and greatest so far is actually in the new book. It's actually in Lovecraft Cocktails. I woke up laughing and had to go test it. And my wife is like, "What are you doing? It's 1:00 in the morning." And I said, "I'm doing research, honey. This is work." As I'm pouring different things, someone challenged me to come up with Miguel Figura actually challenged me to come up with a Robert E. Howard cocktail, and it ran around in my head for 2 weeks as something impossible because Conan wouldn't drink cocktails. And I woke up with the idea of combining beer, mead, and limoncello, and the title of the drink is Beer the Fermentations of the Lemon.
By the way, you're not forgiven. You're not forgiven. That's it. You're not forgiven. I mean, I thought you would do a Solomon Kane rum. I mean, that I thought would be simple enough right there. But I got to tell you, man, that's breathtaking in its scope. Guys, we are.
Describe it.
I have to get to a timeline, do our break, and all that stuff here. Thank you for spending extra time with us. Mike Slater and Tom Roach have joined us this morning. RedDukeGames.com is where you can go to make the magic happen, to get cards for your kids, to get cards for yourself, to get yourself some Necro Nom Nom Nom, or maybe a Lovecraft cocktail or two. I know I'll be enjoying more than a few of these over the holidays. Guys, you're welcome back anytime, especially if you bring treats. Okay?
Thank you so much.
You got it.
Thanks.
Thank you guys so much. Happy Halloween to everybody out there.